Talking Statamic, the podcast where we talk with developers and agencies and people who use Statamic every day. I'm your host, Michael Leroy, and today I'm joined by Marty Friedel, the development director and co-owner of Mity Digital, a specialist digital agency in Australia. Welcome to the show, Marty.
Hi, thank you very much for having me.
Pleasure to have you. Why don't we start with just tell us a little bit about yourself, your background in development. I know just from looking at your website, as you say, you're kind of an OG. You've been around for a while doing this sort of thing. So why don't you give us a little bit of a deep dive?
Yeah, well, so Mity, hang on, how many years is it going to be? It's 10 years this year. Yeah, so Mity's turning 10 this year in July. And It's Michael, so he's the MI. I'm Marty, I'm the TY. And before Mity was formed, we were both working as sole traders, so just running our own small businesses. And we were getting to a point where we started working a lot with each other, and it was getting confusing for clients to have to pass things backwards and forwards between different agencies. Clients didn't understand, so we thought, let's go the next step and put it all together. So we did that. But prior to that, I think I was about 14 years. I think he was 12 years. So we've been working on the web for a very long time. It was a couple of years into Mity's forming that we made that switch to Statamic and to Laravel. Prior to that, everyone builds their own CMS, don't they? That's the project that everyone does.
That's the dream, right?
Yeah. That is, yeah. So, I've gone through that process of doing that and, doing a lot of custom dev work and then also doing some work with Joomla. And we were looking for something that was going to make our lives a little bit easier, but also, help us with our client work too. So I think I've told this story before. I'm wondering if it was even on stage somewhere, but we were having the carpet replaced in the house. And sorry, you'll just need to excuse someone who's missed me for the last couple of days. I have been away. My cat on my T-shirt's been replaced by a real cat. Yeah. So we were getting the carpet replaced in the house, and sitting in the corner on a chair, was doing some research and thinking there's got to be something in the Laravel world that will allow us to, build websites. And that's when we found Statamic, and this was in the early days of version 3. And we haven't looked back, the way that it's been able to change the way that we build sites and give different things for clients, but also keep us in the Laravel ecosystem too. And that's been fantastic for us. 10 years this year, I guess that means we need to have a big party, double digits. Isn't that time for a big one?
Yeah.
Okay. If anyone's in Australia in July, you know where we'll be.
Yeah, if you ever needed an excuse, 10's kind of a magic round number. So
there we go. Well, let's run with that. Okay, I can run with that. Yeah.
So prior to that, you were already, how far into being in the Laravel world were you? Had you already adopted it for most of your work with Mity?
Not really most of the work. We'd started doing some work with Laravel for the custom dev projects that we'd been working on. And but I think we're still very much in the infancy stages. So Laravel was still fairly new, new-ish, but of course, because I don't do things by halves. My very first Laravel app was a full SPA. Then this is before things like Inertia. So full Vue SPA with WebSockets and using Vuex and Vue Router and all of those sorts of things. So even though it was fairly new to the Laravel space, I've been developing for 25 years now. So I feel I've got a lot of experience under my belt. So I kind of just go headfirst into things. But I think we'd only been working on maybe 1 or 2 Laravel projects at that time. But in the same sentence, a lot of the work that we were doing in Joomla would require something that the client would want something different, something extra. They need it to work a certain way. And Joomla very much, while yes, you can make custom components, is definitely not as straightforward as being able to make an add-on in Statamic or build a whatever within the Laravel ecosystem. So, we really did need something that was going to hit both heads, not only the custom dev side of things, but also the content management side of things. That's when we really started looking very seriously for a CMS in Laravel world.
Yeah. Was there a light bulb moment where, as you're looking for different solutions, that this one all of a sudden
Yeah.
stood out?
Yeah.
And what was that?
So back at this time, there was a series of videos on the Statamic docs by Jack, and they were, I don't know, 3 to 5 minutes each. They were really short little videos, but it was stepping you through the process of building a blog. And what I really appreciated about that video series was, here's a small snippet of information, now go and do it yourself. Here's another small snippet of information, do it yourself. And it started to introduce Statamic's concepts in small little bite-sized pieces. And that made it, I think, really easy to understand, especially because I feel the learning curve for Statamic is where some people can get a little intimidated because it throws so many different concepts at you all at once. And so going through this video series did make it really easy to understand how collections worked and how routing within collections worked and how you can mount a collection on an entry. That was the light bulb moment when when you're able to look at the show Antlers file and go, oh, that's where the blog post is going to live. And then there's the index file. Oh, that's where the index page for the blog is going to live. So having those little things just be so bite-sized, and so it just made so much sense to also fit into the way that, we know clients are when they say, oh, I like what you've done, but I want it to do something XYZ. They always want something different. And being able to actually easily be able to make those changes, Statamic is really built for that. And it gives you that freedom and that flexibility. And that was, I think, the big light bulb moment for us. And I said to Michael, we really need to sit down and look at this, and you really need to sit down and look at this and see what you think.
And since you made that decision, how has that transformed the way that you work with your clients?
I think it's been really positive for us to be a lot more productive with clients. And one of the tripping points has been people just don't know what Statamic is. Of course, people know what WordPress is. Some people are happy within the Joomla ecosystem, but we weren't wanting to work in that space anymore. It's made us internally a lot more productive because suddenly we can look at things like deployments through Git. So we use Laravel Forge for our deployment process. Little things like that, even using Tailwind, using Composer, using NPM, these have just made it a lot easier for us to be able to get a site up and running or work together on a site to be able to push changes backwards and forwards and, make different pull requests for new features. But we can work on the same project at the same time without having to worry about trying to keep a database in sync. If you've used Joomla before and you install an add-on, it's going to get its own ID in the database. And what happens if someone else installs that in a different way? Your database is now going to be out of sync. So working with flat files has, really helped with that particular process. And so it's made our life a lot easier. And then at the end of the day, the clients are having a better experience from an authoring point of view because we can author much more custom layouts within Statamic, but without them breaking it or without the risk of them breaking it. So again, looking at WordPress or looking at Joomla World, I guess looking at any other old CMS or older style CMS, here's a text field, typically HTML, go nuts. You can do what you want there. And if you're embedding HTML as part of your template process within an editor, it's just asking for trouble for an author who's not actually a web person. All it takes is one, slash to go missing and the whole page can fall apart. So allowing us to build much more advanced designs without the risk of breaking it has been really great for clients as well. Even someone like my mum, she's a painter, she can keep her own website up to date using Statamic.
Right on. Yeah, and Lachman talked about this in our previous episode where he was, it's the ever ongoing concern about the client being able to break stuff really easily, just especially if you compare it to something like the WordPress block editor, where now all the controls are in the user's hands. There's a scenario where that makes a lot of sense, but by and large, people who are managing the content in a website don't necessarily have those skills where that makes sense for them to have that kind of access.
Sure. I think I've got a whole talk in me about building maintainable sites, and I even did a talk last year at Laravel Meetup Online just about that, but this specifically about the different parts of the website. And we like to give our clients choice when it comes to changing the layout. So if we're looking at WordPress World, being able to say, oh, I want this to be centered or left, or I want it to be, change the way that the width behaves. When we look at our designs, we're trying to make the blocks that we're using be flexible. So we give the client options so that they're able to make this be full width, or give them different columns where they can put different content in different columns. And it's this balance of using a replicator as well as using sets within a barred field that's giving us this insane level of freedom and control. But the key thing is the client can't break it, because if the client will be able to break it, they will break it. It's just a matter of time. And coming around to that, it's not just about the ability to break it, but it's also, why would you store HTML with your actual content? Being able to change the layout or change the appearance of a block by changing the antlers file, you don't have to go through and update hundreds of content files that happen to have HTML embedded. So, that has so much positive behind it as well.
That struck me as a bizarre choice. One of my YouTube videos on my other channel, early on, I was exploring block themes and poking around in the database, trying to find out how does it actually store the information. And it's like, here's a block of HTML, as the content in the database, and then metadata is stored as HTML comments and stuff like that. It's an interesting solution, but ultimately, we're storing HTML in the database. I don't know how I feel about this.
I'm very much the same, and it's always been that lesson of, you want to separate your content from your style. And while HTML is not necessarily the style, it's also the building blocks to help you do the style. And if you've got things, even class names embedded within a database that you now need to go through and change in every single instance where it's being used, that's going to make your life harder in the long run, trying to play around with that. Whereas being able to really separate the HTML and being able to, look at how Bard is processing, it's just going to give you that clean HTML at the end of the day, but you use other fields to give you more control over how each block is going to be rendered. It means when a client turns around and says, hey, we want to change our design, you don't necessarily have to do a rebuild. You can actually just redesign the blocks or play with the blocks that need changing. And we've done that for clients because we have that control to be able to really separate the words from the design.
Right. And then because since everything is just controlled in a Git repo anyway, all you have to do at the end of the day is push your changes, and then magically you have the new version up and running.
Exactly. And it's great for working on a new feature or showing a feature to a client, to be able to really easily deploy that out to show a client what this new feature or this new design is going to look like, but without impacting the production version of the site. That's still able to run on its own branch as well. So that level of freedom, it just makes things so much easier. Even if you need to work on a client site that you haven't touched for a while, you can just pull it down from Git. You don't need to worry about setting up databases and all of that sort of configuration. That has made us, I think, a lot more productive. One big step has been taken out of the equation.
How would you quantify that being more productive? Is it just the two of you at the agency, or do you have another bigger team? In what other ways has it given you that sort of freedom that you've been looking for?
Yeah, so it's the two of us full time. We've got a couple of designers that we work with. It's the little things like being able to work together on the one project at the same time, but work on completely different areas. We can work in different branches and then pull changes backwards and forwards. Well, they only go one way, but you know what I mean. It's easy to get the changes back into that main branch.
Yeah.
So being able to work on things at the same time without without fear of my work impacting work that Michael might be doing. But even if Michael needs something more advanced done for a site, it might just be this one little thing. I don't need to download all the files and then set up a local database and get a user and the username and password for the database and all of those sorts of things. I can just go through and pull the files down, Composer install, NPM install, and we're good to go. So removing the complexities of databases has made things a lot easier for us. And I think for Michael, especially as his background is not as nerdy as mine. I mean, I did computer science and at university. I'm full level nerd. Well, actually, look, to be fair,
yeah.
I did 2 degrees. I did computer and information science, and I did media arts in interactive multimedia and web development. So I've got both sides of that spectrum.
Okay.
I've got the design side. I've also got
Right.
the nerd side too. Michael started a little later with his web development process, so getting up and running in Statamic with Composer and NPM had a much bigger learning curve for him because he was used to working with, like how WordPress works, where, hey, here's FTP, let's FTP our files up to the server.
Right.
Or that
Yeah.
lovely fun thing that some people still love to do, let's just do it on production. So yeah,
Oh gosh.
yeah, those sorts of things. So trying to, I can't even remember what the question was now. Oh, how it's made things, better for us.
Yeah.
By removing some of those complications when it comes to FTP and replacing them with things that can streamline it a lot more, like Composer and NPM and Git, that just saves so much more time in being able to collaboratively work on the one project. And I think that's been the really big thing.
Yeah. And, just to speak a little bit in the defense of WordPress, far be it for me to do something like that on this show.
I think you're probably better to speak about positives for WordPress than I am.
Yeah, I mean, like I don't remember the last time I deployed anything with FTP, even in that world. I set up GitHub Actions, or if I have a staging environment, a lot of hosts have the ability to just merge or push staging up to production, or SSH into the server and pull your master branch or whatever it is. But I think the real challenge was and remains the database part, right? Not being able to keep that in sync alongside of your changes is probably the most difficult thing. I was recently I still do WordPress projects here and there, and was recently doing one where I needed to deploy, and the host didn't have a mechanism to allow a technical person like myself to use the command line to SSH into the server. I kind of had to just clone it from some other environment, and they had this sort of pseudo SSH workaround where you could trigger a Git action or something to pull, but you don't really have access. So I find that the access level on stuff like that is still fairly limited, where I can't just Composer install unless I'm using some other workaround that has that sort of built in as a wrapper. But anyway, what you were saying makes a lot of sense to me. Just being able to run those commands and boom, everything's up and running in seconds is a huge boon.
Yeah, even when we have to go back and work on a site that may not be living on our set up in our dev environment anymore, being able to pull it down and 2 commands and you're up and running, ready to go. Even those little things can just make it so much easier. Look, even from a bug reporting point of view, every now and then you find bugs in software because nothing out there is going to be bug free. But what I do love is that when I do find something, I always want to make sure I can replicate it without any add-ons, without anything that's in my specific project. Is it something as simple as this exact combination of blocks and fields and whatnot? And if I can replicate that and make a little repository and push that up with a GitHub issue, I know it makes the core team's life a hell of a lot easier because, here's exactly the problem. I don't need to set it up. Someone else has made it for me. They can just pull it down and Composer install, NPM install, and away they go. And they've got a working repo of that particular issue. I think that goes,
And you're probably a lot less likely to encounter that scenario where it works on my machine, but the other people.
Exactly. If it works everywhere except on one machine, I would say there's something wrong with your machine, or your server or your environment, wherever it is. But being able to, push things around with Git and make it so easy to set up a new site to demonstrate issues or even have a play. I want to see how this feature works, or I want to see how that works. You can just easily spin up a new site to play around without impacting actual project work as well. Those little things that can just be a great little playground to see how things can fit together is so easy to get up and running as well. And I think that's been really good from our curiosity point of view, rather than going, we'll wait till maybe there'll be a project that will use this feature, to actually being able to just spin something up within a couple of minutes and start playing on that specific feature. Those sorts of things, I think, give developers a lot more access or easy access to these new features and to try different things. I think that level of curiosity is really good from a developer point of view, to keep your ideas fresh and keep your mind open with what you can do.
Yeah, and I noticed that you guys have a bunch of different add-ons listed on Mity's website. Was that born out of little experiments like you're talking about, or would you say a lot of those things are maybe more the result of a particular client project need? And hey, wouldn't this be a great thing to add to the marketplace?
A lot of them actually have come out of client need. Some of them were more of a learning process for me. At the time when Feedemit came out, there wasn't an active RSS feed for Statamic 3. And so that was the first one that I wrote, and that's actually going through a complete rewrite at the moment. I'm midway through doing that. And it scratched the itch for me, but it also gave me time and space to be able to learn how to write add-ons myself. Others, like the stripe field type that we've got and the variable number field type, have actually come out of client projects where we work with a lot of clients who often have similar problems that need solving, and the stripe field type and the variable number field type have come out of repeat work that we've done with clients where we know we've got clients that have these similar needs. So we actually have written add-ons that have allowed us to share that functionality across different sites. And then we thought, well, if we're using it multiple times, these are things that other people may actually take advantage of as well. So everything that's there has basically come out of a need that we've had along the way. And I think the very first one, Feedemic, was really about, I'm writing a blog for myself and I want an RSS feed because I'm old school. And so that's where that one came from. Like I still look at my RSS feed every single, not my feed. I'm not that big-headed. I look at my reader.
Right.
We'll put it that way. I look at my reader every day.
Yeah. Are there any other of your add-ons that you'd like to highlight? Like these were huge wins for us.
So two-factor for Statamic actually came out of a client need where they required two-factor and they wanted to stay with Joomla because they were able to get two-factor. And at that time, there was only one other add-on for two-factor for Statamic, and that hadn't been updated for quite a few months, and it had some open issues that hadn't been worked on for a few months. And the client didn't like that, even though it was still open source, that we would be able to, help maintain it. And we were about to lose this client, and we were prepared to walk away because they were going to stay with Joomla, and we just didn't want to stay in that space anymore. And we thought, well, why don't we write our own add-on and let's maintain it ourselves. It'll keep our client happy. And it won us the job. It's what kept them as a client for us, which was really positive. And because this other add-on was having a few open issues that ours happened to resolve, we thought, well, let's put that out there in the marketplace as well. The other developers weren't active in the community as much anymore. They pivoted with the work that they were doing. So in a way, it maybe helped them. It took the stress off of them. So that really came out of a client need, and I guess for us to try to keep a client and allow us to keep working within the Statamic world. Because we are a small team, we just don't have the capacity to be able to work in multiple ecosystems and be efficient at working in multiple ecosystems.
And what sort of clients are coming to you these days? Are they coming to you because of Statamic, or are they coming to you and discovering Statamic?
Mostly discovering Statamic. I don't think a lot of people, to be honest, know, especially in Australia, know what Statamic is. I know there are quite a few other Statamic developers out there, even who aren't active in the community. So if you're out there, say hi. We'd love to get to know some local developers as well. I will do a plug for the user group that I look after for the Australia-New Zealand community. We catch up all the time. So yes, they are online, but we are going to be doing some in-person ones this year. So hey, Australian and New Zealand and even within the Asia-Pacific community, if you're out there, reach out and, we'd love to catch up and hang out online a little bit more. But yeah, clients that come through, when we show them Statamic, that's when the penny drop moment happens. When a client sees their site in Statamic and can see how easy it is for them to update their own site and make these complex page layouts, but they can do it themselves with ease, upload images and have them resize and be web friendly. All of these sorts of things is when that penny drop moment hits for a client. And we've never had a client come back and say, I don't like working with Statamic. And I would say that most clients are probably more proactive at keeping their site up to date because they can do a lot more with a lot less skill. And I think that's been really useful because at the end of the day, they've got a business to run themselves. They don't want to be, remembering how to use CMS XYZ or, log into some different app, and it all just gets too hard. So the intuitiveness is what has turned won clients for us. They just needed to get their head around how it actually works and to see it in action. So we do think that a demo is really the best way to talk to a client about Statamic, so that they can actually see what it is, not just talk about these, ideas, pie in the sky ideas,
Sure.
but actually show them what it can mean. And that's when a client will go, okay, I see how this is going to make my life easier. And that's what's been really positive for clients when they see that moment.
Yeah, and that was one of the things that attracted me initially to Statamic as well. It's not just that it has a great developer experience, but the user experience at the end of the day, as you say, is far more intuitive. And you can do so much with it without breaking stuff if you build it right. I love being able to demo Statamic when I get the opportunity, because usually, more often than not, they get that light bulb moment. Oh, this is for sure going to work for me. So you mentioned the community over there in Australia and Asia Pacific in general. It seems like you're pretty active in the Laravel Statamic community in general. You've done talks at Laracon. You manage this meetup group. Do you want to tell us a little bit about your community involvement and the sort of things that you guys are involved with?
I'm putting a lot more emphasis at the moment on in-person connection, and I think Laracon AU really showed that as well. Being able to speak to someone face-to-face, I think, has a lot of value behind it. And with the Statamic meetup that we look at online, because it's such a large region, obviously it's hard to do in-person meetups that can cater to so many people. So doing these online has been a great way to connect with people in New Zealand and people throughout Australia. And we would like to try and do some in-person ones throughout the year. And we're going to be in Sydney at some point and Melbourne at some point. And then later in the year with Laracon AU as well, we'll try and do a meetup there as well, which is obviously when everyone will converge on the one area. So hopefully it can be a good place to meet and greet different people. I think that trying to build these connections that are more meaningful has been, I think, a really big focus for me. And online, while it's great that the internet brings everyone together, it's also been, I think, a little bit hard from where we are geographically located. Our time zone's out of whack. So, we can open up communities and see what's happened overnight, and that's been what's happened in Europe and what's happened in the US. And communities can suddenly take flight overnight, and it becomes a really overwhelming thing for us to look at. So being able to engage with local communities, I think, has been really good. I've spoken at PHP Melbourne and PHP Adelaide, and then Laracon AU twice as well. But being able to connect with people in the same time zone, I think, has been really, or at least a similar time zone, has been, I think, very positive for me to build these more meaningful relationships. And places like Laracon AU has been a great place to meet and connect with different people. And I've made some very meaningful friends through those connections as well. And my aim at the moment is to keep focusing on building these meaningful connections. And some may be more professional, some may be more personal, but these relationships and these connections, I think, are what's so valuable about communities. And it's great seeing things start to flourish and I guess finding my way within more local communities as well. I think working remotely, and especially for the pandemic, I was in Victoria throughout the pandemic, and we had, I think, about 6 months worth of lockdown over a 2-year period. So there was a lot of isolation happening and a lot of not seeing people, and not just from a tech world point of view, but in just the world in general. But it really helped redefine, I think, relationships and I guess the values that I put on different relationships, and making sure that I'm spending my time and my energy on relationships that are positive for, I guess, what I'm wanting to get out of things. And that goes for, again, personal relationships, but also within the tech community as well, to make sure that these engagements are meaningful and positive, and everyone's support and being surrounded by people who are more supportive of each other. being able to pick and choose relationships, I think, has been a big learning point for me.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, I totally resonate with that. Meeting in person adds a whole new level of value to relationships. Um, you know, for me, going to Laracon, I went to the last two, which were in Nashville and Dallas, respectively. And I'm not an extroverted person, so an event like that can be pretty overwhelming. So, surprise, if you think I'm extroverted, here I am talking on camera. I'm not. Um, so, I mean, these one-on-one things give me the opportunity to get to know people in a different way, but it's also kind of fun to introduce people such as yourself to a larger audience, and then maybe at some sort of meetup, you know, the introverted person like me can go and introduce myself to someone like you who wouldn't know me from Adam. Um, but I know that you're there, and there's an opportunity to connect. And I find that everybody's usually pretty approachable, even if you have this sort of elevated perception of a person. They're the rock star in the community. They're just a person too, and they love it when you come and talk to them, and because everybody's there to make connections and to build bridges and improve relationships. And you never know what's going to come from them. I mean, I met people my first Laracon that I'm still in touch with, and continue to be friends with. And some of those things lead to business opportunities, and some of them lead to just friendships. And it's a really enriching kind of experience. And I encourage people to go to those sorts of in-person meetups when there's the opportunity, because you never know what's going to happen.
I completely agree, and I'm with you. I'm the most introverted person, and that again is bizarre given getting on stage at Laracon is not it's not an easy thing to do. And I think especially for my talk last year in the lead up. So my talk last year, for those that haven't seen it, was called The Invisible Developer, and it was a personal talk, a lot talking about my anxiety, my depression, but also about mindfulness and connection. And in the lead up, so I was the last speaker on the second day, and I'm watching all these other speakers thinking, this isn't going to land, this isn't going to work, this isn't the right audience, I can't do this, this is going to be a complete failure. And it was actually anything but. And I've had the immediate aftermath of that talk. I had conversations with people who I made very deep conversations with people I'd never met before. I had a couple of tried conversations. It had created some impact with some people that I think was just resonating throughout the evening, where they would try to come and have a conversation and just couldn't get the words out, and they'd disappear, and then they'd come back again, couldn't get words out. And, we've since caught up online and had a deeper conversation about that. But I think that it showed me that those feelings are not necessarily something that's unique to me, and a lot of people out there feel that way. But being able to build these connections that can mean something, I think, has been the most rewarding thing that's come out of that. And that going and meeting people in person, whether it's at a Laracon, which can be intimidating, or whether it's at a local meetup, going and meeting people in person is fantastic. And I mean, even this year, Matt Stauffer, I had a chat to him about this in person as well. When I was starting in the Laravel community, it must have been during the pandemic when Laracon was held online, and I watched one of his talks, and I reached out to Matt on Twitter and asked a question, and I was so surprised that I actually got a reply, just because I guess my experience of dealing with people in the general world has always been, those sort of people who are at conferences wouldn't have time to talk to, just common people who message them on Twitter. But no, he actually reached out. We had a quick little chat. Okay, great. But then to actually be able to meet him in person, and, he is just the loveliest guy. But being able to actually put that face to that name and spend a little bit of time with him as well, that in-personness that you get from people is just second to none. So if anyone out there is on the fence about going to a meetup or going to a Laracon event or any sort of conference event, go and do it. Even if you don't think you're going to know anyone, that's why you go. You go and you meet people, and even those introverts. And
Yeah.
I said this on stage, this is my face. This is my normal face. This is my happy, I'm fine face. I may not look happy, but it's the face I got. Come and say hi. Here I'm on a podcast. I'm talking. As you know, I now will talk a lot. So, if anyone does see me out and about and at any of these events and wants to say hi, please come and say hi. Because I'm just as introverted, and I'm not going to come and say hi either, because it scares the crap out of me to go and do that myself. So I get what that feels like. So maybe all of us introverts need to put we're not good at going and saying hi to people badge on, and then we can kind of know who's who, and we can go, hi, I don't want to say hi either. Okay, cool. And yeah, maybe that needs to be a thing. We can start that for the next one.
Yeah, and huge shout out to our extroverted friends who put up with us tagging along with them wherever they go.
Oh, definitely. You hide behind them in the shadows and wait for an introduction point. And you go, oh yeah, hi, okay, yeah.
Oh yeah.
Mm-hmm, yeah.
Have you met Marty?
Yes, definitely. Echoes in volumes, definitely.
Well, I think this is a great place to wrap up. What a great way to finish. I mean, this is a topic that transcends Laravel and Statamic and all that. I mean, building relationships and all that stuff is kind of central to what it means to be human. So I love that. But before we sign off, I want to touch on what are always the most important questions of our lives. Do you prefer light mode or dark mode? Okay.
Now, this is... I'm going to be a true fence sitter here.
Okay.
IDE, dark mode. Mm-hmm. Mac OS interface, light mode. Mm-hmm. iPhone and iPad I have on auto, so during the day it'll be light mode, but then in the evening it'll switch to dark mode. How's that answer that question?
That resonates with me. For a long time I was the same, where I was in my editor, dark mode, Mac OS, light mode, but now I do the Mac OS dark mode. For a while I was automatic, but I just don't even think about it anymore. It's just always on dark mode, and it's just normal now. So that is what it is.
How was that transition for you? Because I feel that Mac OS, when it goes to dark mode, is just very dark.
It depends on the app. I mean, some of them are thoughtfully designed and others are not. For example, I mean, for my web browser right now, I'm using Brave, and I feel like it's well done. I enjoy dark mode with Brave. Notion as well is pretty nice with dark mode. What else? Some things look more or less the same. So it feels pretty smooth. I don't know.
Maybe I'll have to have a play with it and see how we go.
The other one is, I don't know how passionate you guys are about the controversial topic of pineapple on pizza in Australia.
This is... I love a Hawaiian pizza.
Yeah.
So I'm all in on pineapple on pizza. I don't know if this news has made it overseas yet. This has been doing the rounds this week. There's a pizza place somewhere in Australia, I actually don't know where it is, who is trying to make the next big pizza. And instead of pineapple, they're putting orange on pizza.
Okay.
And I need to put a hard pass on that. I don't think that's right. I don't think I could get my head around that. Pineapple, yes. I'm a big pineapple person. Orange, no, maybe not.
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm. I mean, there's certain things that for sure belong and don't belong. But sometimes until you're presented with something new, you don't really know until you try it. I remember when I was a kid, there was some sitcom on TV in the early 90s. I forget. I don't even remember what the show was, but the kid wanted chocolate chips on their pizza on the show. I thought, oh, that's a brilliant idea. I love pizza. I love chocolate chips. Let's do it. And my gracious parents said, okay. And it was a disaster.
See, that's the thing. Just because you can doesn't mean you should.
Yes.
Yeah, there are some things that don't go together. Although, look, on the thing of chocolate chips, I do love chocolate and potato chips. Like just plain chocolate and plain salted potato chips. Love it. Really good combination. It's that crunchy, salty, and sweetened. Oh.
I'm with you. I'm fully on board for that. If given the choice between some other flavor of potato chips or just the plain salty ones, give me the plain salty ones any day. Yeah. But the chocolate has to be dark chocolate for me. I can't do the sweet milk chocolate anymore. Maybe it's just because I'm
How,
getting
how,
old.
how dark is your dark chocolate?
It's got to be at least 70%.
Okay, so dark chocolate, yeah.
Dark and with some salt in there. Yeah,
Yeah,
definitely.
yeah. I think when it gets dark, it needs that little bit of salt to it as well. There's so many varieties of dark chocolate. And I mean, for a lot of people, this isn't going to mean anything big. You'll just shrug it off and go, yeah, okay, whatever. Just coming back from overseas, the airport had Garrett's popcorn. So we were those people with this giant bag of Garrett's popcorn coming back into the country because, man, that stuff is good and you just can't get it anywhere here. So it's the little things sometimes. I'm the snack person. Take me anywhere and I will find the snacks wherever we go. So, yeah.
And
dangerous.
which part of
That's
Australia?
a dangerous one.
Yeah. And which part of Australia are you in? Are you in Adelaide?
I'm in Adelaide, yes.
Okay. And is that...
Yep, so it's in South Australia.
Right. And my Australian geography isn't great, but I think you're close to the sort of wine region over there as well.
Yes.
Are you?
Yes.
Are you?
So,
I'm kind of a wine lover over here. I have a budding cellar. But do you imbibe from time to time?
yes. Yeah, oh, yeah. So we've got the Barossa Valley up north. We've got McLaren Vale down south. And then out east is the Adelaide Hills. So I live in the foothills of the Adelaide Hills, and where my office is, I can look out one direction and I see the city. I look out the other direction and I see the hills. And we are about a 10-minute walk, maybe 20-minute walk from Penfolds Estate Winery.
Oh, yeah. I know that one.
And so during our summer holidays, we went and did a tour at Penfolds Estate. And it was great to be able to see where they make the wine, see the vineyards as well, and also go down underground where they've got their cellars, where they've got their big barrels, where they put in their yearly their yearly wines. It was just very, very impressive. And then they had a tasting afterwards, and I'm glad we walked. They were very generous tastings.
Yeah, fantastic. Well, I'm jealous. It's one thing that I'd love to do is go visit some of the wineries in Australia. I mean, I'm not familiar with the Adelaide region, but Barossa, those are the ones that I've heard of for sure. And Penfolds, obviously.
Actually, and further than southeast, we've also got the Coonawarra region as well. So South Australia is full of wine regions. So we'll see you soon, Michael. We'll come down and we'll go on a bit of a road trip around the wine.
Yeah, maybe I'll plan for Laracon AU one of these years.
I think definitely you should come down for a Laracon AU. It's a great time to come and explore the country. And, there's been international guests. You should even put in a request to put in a talk. There you go. Yeah, that's the way to come down.
Yeah.
Come and
I'll have to pay my cousin. I'll have to pay my cousin a visit. She married a Australian bloke. I can't tell you where they live, but it's been a few years
Australia,
since I've seen them.
somewhere.
There you go. Yeah.
Yeah, there you go. See, it's a family reason as well. Yeah,
there you go.
It is a great look. I am biased, but it is a great place to come and visit. I think that the one thing though, for anyone who is interested in coming to Australia, the distance between the cities is a lot bigger than you might expect from Europe or in the US and Canada, where you can drive for a whole day between capital cities, and there's not a lot in between them. So allow plenty of time if you're driving. Otherwise, flying is the easiest way to get around from major city to major city.
For sure. I mean, there's a lot of parallels there for Canada. I mean, Canada's a huge country too. So depending on where you are, it can be quite a ways before you see civilization again.
Yeah.
So
there's so much to see and there's so many places. But hey, if anyone does want to come and travel and wants any advice of where they should go at, again, come and say hi. See, I'm friendly and love to talk. So
fantastic. Okay. Well, I think that's a wrap. Huge thanks to our guest, Marty Friedel. If you enjoyed this conversation, please make sure to subscribe on your favorite podcast player. Over on YouTube, if you like to watch, and leave us a review and a comment. You can follow us on X at Talking Statamic and on Blue Sky. You can join the mailing list at talkingstatamic.com. And don't forget to check out my other YouTube channel, From WordPress to Statamic. Thanks for listening, and we'll catch you on the next one. Ciao.